Welcome in Off the Hook Sports. I am your host, Caleb Calhoun. A lot to get to today as we recap what Josh Heupel said in his press conference yesterday. We start our preview talking about Syracuse. Is it a concern if Tennessee doesn't blow them out? That's going to be today's tough question. Josh Heupel's press conference. We will play 4 downs with that. Joel Klatt is accusing Tennessee of manipulating the narrative on the whole Nico Iamaleava saga. Yes, we're getting back to Nico again. We're going to talk about him. That story doesn't die. So we're going to talk about the Nico saga and what Joel Klatt said about it. Also, Hendon Hooker cut by Detroit. And a quarterback's coach blames Tennessee's offensive system. Is it truly Tennessee's offensive system's fault? We're going to break that down as well. And we will close with our preseason SEC power rankings. I'll have a column on this up a little bit later on where every team belongs. It is official. Football season is here, baby. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. Our show is brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com. We broadcast live every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. All right, let's get rolling, everybody. It is today's tough question, and it involves Tennessee's matchup with Syracuse. Tennessee is going to kick off the season against Syracuse on Saturday at noon. After being favored by as many as 21 points during the preseason, the line has moved significantly recently. Tennessee opened a 12.5-point favorite by most insider odds. According to FanDuel, they are now 13.5-point favorites with the over-under set at 50.5, which, if you are doing the math, that would mean that Tennessee, if the odds makers were right, would roughly beat Syracuse 32-18, 32-19, something like that. Okay. Is it a big deal? Are you concerned if Tennessee doesn't blow out Syracuse? That is today's tough question. Are you concerned if Tennessee doesn't blow out Syracuse? I've already got the poll question up. Will you be concerned if Tennessee doesn't blow out Syracuse? 62% of you say no. 38% of you say yes. I'm now going to reset the poll question, actually, though, which is this. I will be concerned if Tennessee doesn't blow out Syracuse, beat Syracuse comfortably, just beat Syracuse, or wins a close one. Put it this way. To make me happy, Tennessee needs to blow out Syracuse, beat Syracuse comfortably, just win the game. Nothing will make me uneasy. You guys vote on that now. That is the poll question. To make me happy, Tennessee needs to blow out Syracuse, beat Syracuse comfortably, just win the game. Nothing will make me uneasy. Do they need to blow them out? Do they need to cover? Do they need to just win? Or are you fine even if they lose? I mean, I don't know who's going to vote on that one. But you guys go ahead and vote on that right now. That is the poll question. Now up today's tough question again, brought to you by Banks & Jones. Here's what I think. Tennessee needs to beat Syracuse relatively comfortably to be comfortable about the season. Tennessee, as a 13.5-point favorite, is not facing last year's Syracuse team. For those who don't know, remember, Syracuse last year went 10-3, finished the year ranked in the top 25 in both polls, number 22, and won their last 4 games, including a huge win against Miami to close out the regular season, which knocked Miami and Cam Ward out of the college football playoff. So Syracuse has and that was Fran Brown's first year. Fran Brown's a very good coach. They have a very versatile offense. However, they lost a lot of talent from last year's team. They're bringing in a lot of new guys, just like Tennessee is, by the way. That would lead you to believe that talent would win out, but also both these teams have complex formations and things that they run, and they're both going to be very sloppy. to open the season. However, just with talent alone and just with Syracuse's lack of experience, I think Tennessee needs to win comfortably. When I say comfortably, I mean by double digits. They probably need to cover, but if they don't cover, it's not the end of the world. Don't forget, it's not the first time Tennessee has struggled with Syracuse, a Syracuse team that they were better than if they do barely win. I mean, we all know the Tennessee-Syracuse 1998 game. Tennessee won that game 34-33. For those who don't remember, Tennessee was favored by about 5 in that game. Okay, and that was so basically Tennessee did not cover that game. I think they were favored by about 5. You guys can correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure they were roughly favored by about 5, and Tennessee ended up winning that game by 1 off a last-second field goal thanks to a pass interference on the final game-winning drive. Now, this time around, Tennessee's favored by a lot more, and Tennessee is not as good as that 98 team, which would lead you to believe that there's a bigger concern if they don't cover. But I think, for the most part, Tennessee just needs to beat them comfortably. If they win a close game, there are reasons for concern. I don't think they have to blow them out, though. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, Banks & Jones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The poll question up. To make me happy, Tennessee needs to blow out Syracuse, beat Syracuse comfortably, just win the game, and nothing will make me uneasy. And 67% of you agree with me. They need to beat Syracuse comfortably. 27% say just win the game. 7% say blow them out. Now, again, like I said, one of the reasons you could say just win comfortably, and one of the reasons you could maybe be okay if there's not a blowout in this one, is that Tennessee is not 100% on in the secondary. The key to their team this year is Jermon McCoy getting fully healthy. He's not going to be fully healthy on Saturday. We know that much. So because he's not going to be fully healthy on Saturday, Jermon McCoy is going to basically Tennessee's going to have some issues in this at defensive back, particularly with Syracuse's offense and how complex of a scheme Jeff Nixon runs. Colton Hood and Ricky Gibson III should be able to hold things down, though. We'll see how that all plays out. But I do think it's not the end of the world if Tennessee doesn't win a blowout here. Again, some of their better seasons, they won a close one against a team they should have blown out. The memorable 2022 football team, Tennessee needed overtime to beat Pittsburgh. Now, yes, you will say yes, Pittsburgh had won the ACC the year before. Yes, that was a road game for Tennessee. However, the Pittsburgh team that year was not as good as the team that won the ACC the year before. I think their only top 25 win on the year in the regular season was Syracuse, and that was a Syracuse team that finished 7-6. The other one was UCLA, ironically, in the Sun Bowl. But they were not good at the start of the year. And although it was a road game for Tennessee, it wasn't really a road game for those who don't remember. Tennessee pretty much filled up that stadium. There are a couple of memorable years. Otherwise, non-conference games where Tennessee looked pretty good to start the year. Tennessee blew out Syracuse back in 2001. The last year they had finished in the top 10 before 2022. But for those who don't remember, while they did win 33-9, that was a very ugly 33-9 win. That was the first game of the year, and it was Dante Stallworth caught a touchdown pass from Casey Clausen on the first offensive play, and it was hideous the rest of the time. I don't know how familiar you guys are with how hideous that was during that time, but that was an ugly, ugly, ugly win, even though Tennessee won in a blowout. 98, we obviously know Tennessee beat Syracuse by 1. 97, Tennessee visited UCLA and only won by 6, but that was at UCLA. 98 was at Syracuse. Syracuse won the Big East, and UCLA finished 10-2. And number 5, their only losses were to a Washington State team led by Ryan Leaf and a Tennessee team led by Peyton Manning. So they really had nothing to be ashamed of in that. Obviously, 96, Tennessee had the really, really, really bad loss to Memphis that is very, very infamous. And Philip Fulmer lore. Then 95, we're talking about the memorable years, now the golden years of Tennessee. They pretty much blew out every team they played from non-conference play. They played Oklahoma State, East Carolina, and Southern Miss. And then in 93, their other memorable season, non-conference play, blew out Louisiana Tech, blew out Duke, and blew out a top 15 Louisville team. So those were all memorable ones. But for the most part, against teams of Syracuse's caliber, if Tennessee is going to have a good season, they're usually going to blow them out. They're not going to win close. Again, when they do win close games, it's against really, really good conference championship caliber teams, and Syracuse is not that this year. So I would just say, though, they need to beat them comfortably to see how this all plays out. Portions of the program are brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Chat with 2Ts, mortgage.com. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Chat with 2Ts, mortgage.com. It is time for Four Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. And it involves Josh Heupel's press conference on Monday. Josh Heupel gave his first in-season weekly press conference Monday to speak to the media ahead of Tennessee's matchup against Syracuse, and revealed a lot of things about the Vols that we have to discuss now. What are the standout things of what he said? That is Four Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. And I always say this is for Dave Hooker. You guys can hashtag DH in the message boards, as we hope he gets well soon. I don't have the soundboard that Dave Hooker has, which is how we use Cooper Mays to tee us off on the Four Downs. And because of that, I do a Cooper Mays impression. That's how I like to do this. So we're diving in now. Here's my Cooper Mays impression. We go from, we start Four Downs with a request from Cooper Mays, which is, Cooper Mays here, hit like and subscribe. That's right. Cooper Mays has asked you guys to hit like and subscribe right now. Now we bring up the downs on things Josh Heupel said at the press conference. Coop here. First down. Boo Carter expected to be out on the field. We kind of thought this was going to happen. We didn't know how it was all going to play out, but Josh Heupel confirmed it for us yesterday. He said he anticipates Boo Carter playing on Saturday. Heupel adds, quote, "For all of us during the course of the week, it's still learn it, earn it, and taking a job and improving every day." Very vague, but as we're gathering, there's no more talk of Boo Carter not being a regular starter for Tennessee. It looks like Tennessee is going to rely on him heavily this year. Excuse me. Tennessee's going to rely on him heavily. Cooper Mays here. Second down. Josh Heupel made a revealing comment, and something I feel similar about too, which is he was asked about offensive line chemistry. Because as you know, Tennessee has to replace 4 starters on the offensive line, including Cooper Mays, by the way. They are working between William Satterwhite and Sam Pendleton at center. One of them will probably play center. The other will probably play guard. Then you got Jesse Perry, Wendell Moe Jr. also in the running in the rotation to play guard. The tackles will be Lance Hurd and I believe David Sanders Jr. at right tackle. Lance Hurd is the only returning starter. Heupel says he feels good about the offensive line chemistry, seeing it in the meeting room and on the practice field. But he also said something else that applies to the young receivers as well, because he also says the young receivers have been super mature since they started in January, and that he's got great trust in the receivers. Tennessee has to replace all 3 receivers from last year too. Their 2 starting wideouts, Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton, and their starting slot receiver in Squirrel White. Now, I have told you guys for a while that I think the receiver unit will be better this year than it was last year, because the 3 leading receivers, while they're all gone, none of them were 100%. Brew McCoy, you love him. He was supposed to be a guy who dictates coverage, but he was coming back from a broken leg and just had lost a huge step. Dante Thornton was probably the best. He was very good when he would at getting up yards per reception, at 25.4 yards per reception. But he was also coming back from a season-ending injury. And Squirrel White was a slot receiver playing with a separated shoulder half the year. So the only returning receiver with the most production is Chris Brassel, who will be the number 2 wideout, who had 29 catches for 333 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. The number 1 wideout will be Mike Matthews. I believe Mike Matthews will be better than Brew McCoy. He just needed a year to learn the system. And I also believe because of injuries, Braylon Taylor will be better than Boo Carter, who also just needed a year to learn the system. So Heupel talks about the touting of receivers, and with that, despite the experience issue, I think the receivers will be better. But Heupel gave a revealing quote when it came to the offensive line that I think applies to both the receivers and the quarterbacks, which is this quote: "You guys keep talking about all the young players and new players, but we've had a lot of time on task with them at this point, so we feel good about them." That is key, and I'm very big on that too. While they don't have starting in-game experience, everybody that we're talking about has been in the system working with it since the spring of 2024. So, with that in mind, I mean, outside of Joey Aguilar, but he's experienced, he's not a young player. But the quote-unquote young players that we're talking about have been working with this offense for a year and a half now. They should be very familiar with it. So while there's not a lot of experience starting, the talent is there, and they are familiar with the system, and it's not like they haven't seen some SEC competition. So with all that in mind, I think they should be okay, and I think the lack of experience shouldn't be a big deal going into this year. We'll see. I think the offensive line will have more growing pains than the receivers are, but overall, things should really take off by the middle of the year, and it should be good enough to get them past this game against Syracuse. Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down. Everybody's been healthy in the passing game. That's another point Josh Heupel made. That's one that we have to stick with because he said that last week, but last week also Chris Brazel's charges were dismissed, and Josh Heupel, that's a big thing because now everybody that he wants to use as his primary targets in the passing game, they're all there. That includes Miles Skitzelman. He said this yesterday, by the way. Miles Skitzelman is the main tight end. Ethan Davis is the complimentary backup tight end. And then Chris Brazel, Mike Matthews, and Braylon Staley at the receiver spot. Boo Carter being the other option at slot with Braylon Staley coming out at times, I think is a big deal. The only issue will be the other wideout, but I believe that Amari Jefferson, I've changed on this. I used to believe it was one of the freshmen, but I now believe Amari Jefferson will be the other wideout to step in when Mike Matthews or Chris Brazel need a break, and Boo Carter will be the one to fill in for Braylon Staley. I think that'll be their 5 receiver rotation with Matthews, Staley, and Brazel, the 3 main guys. But it is a big deal that everybody's healthy, and Heupel said everybody's out there. That is, again, you can't undersell how important that is. 4 downs brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. 4th down coming up next.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume 4 dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down. 4th down is this. No official backup quarterback to Joey Aguilar. Josh Heupel was asked, who will be the backup quarterback to Joey Aguilar? And he's between George McIntyre and Jake Merklinger. And he said, you'll find out on Saturday. Josh Heupel's not releasing a depth chart for this game. Now, I could go on about that, and maybe I will later in the week. But just for this, I would have to say that Josh Heupel not releasing a depth chart is kind of silly, but I'll also say that I don't know if he knows who the backup quarterback is going to be yet. I think that I'm not so sure there's not a little bit of politicking in this because he's not entirely sure who the backup quarterback will be. We're going to have to find that out, but I do think Josh Heupel doesn't know for sure who the backup quarterback will be. And I think that's why he's saying it. I don't think it's gamesmanship on that part, but we're going to see. I will say at the very least that it kind of stands out that Josh Heupel hasn't named his backup quarterback yet. But again, we'll find out. We'll see how this all goes. We don't know how this is all going to play out in the end. I want to address a quick funny comment real quick, which is that who was it that said it? Steve Sullivan says the movie Big Daddy is Syracuse's only claim to fame. All right, want to know something funny about that? I have a weird memory, but that in that movie, it came out in the summer of '99 as a P-Back Prime. Love that name. Says, did Big Daddy come out before or after Tennessee's last ever natty? It came out after, funny enough. It came out in the summer of '99. And Adam Sandler says at the beginning, I'm having a hard time. Syracuse is 0-3. They never started 0-3 in the 90s. So I don't know when Syracuse was 0-3 and when that movie is supposed to take place, but that's a flaw in the movie because Syracuse never started out 0-3 in the 90s. I'm going through the whole decade now, even in 98, which you would assume this came on the heels of 98 when they were filming the movie. Syracuse started 0-2, which included a loss to Tennessee. But they never started 0-3 in the 90s. So Big Daddy was wrong on that. Just want to point out they were wrong. They started, as a matter of fact, in 98, they started 0-1, but then they beat Michigan the next week. A Tom Brady-led Michigan team in 98. So, no, Big Daddy is wrong. It was inaccurate. Syracuse was never 0-3. In the fall of 98, while Tennessee was winning the national championship, another funny stat, that was when Waterboy was coming out. That was when Waterboy came out. The inspiring movie of a socially disabled person abandoned by his father who found love for football playing linebacker. I'm sorry, you could make Waterboy, if you said the story of Waterboy publicly to somebody, you could make it sound like a very serious Oscar-winning movie. You really could. A man with a social disability abandoned by his father finds talent playing football and becomes one of the most beloved college football players in history. I mean, guys, you could literally do another version of Waterboy and make it a serious movie. I mean, it's Forrest Gump, if you really think about it. They just made it Forrest Gump. But yeah, that's my interesting take on Adam Sandler movies. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. HempHouseChatWith2Ts.com, HempHouseChatWith2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. When we come back, Hendon Hooker cut by Detroit, and a shot is taken at Josh Heupel's offense. We're going to talk about that. Is it a big deal? That'll be bank on it. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Hello, ma'am. Here to look at that plumbing problem?
Oh boy. Yep, you're gonna need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP. You are not gonna believe this. You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Caleb Calhoun here. Hit that like and subscribe button. We continue our coverage with news surrounding Hendon Hooker, the quarterback responsible for helping Josh Heupel reach new heights at Tennessee, who Josh Heupel didn't even want to start at first. Hendon Hooker has been cut by the Detroit Lions ahead of entering his third season. Upon getting cut by the Lions, quarterback coach Ted Wynn who breaks a lot of things down of The Athletic, quarterback and analyst, Ted Wynn, came out and said that Tennessee offense puts skill players in a developmental hole. He then further goes by saying Tennessee fans seem shocked by this, but the offense has the quarterback waiting for an isolated receiver to run a deep route. Extremely productive in college with the right talent, doesn't translate the pros. And then use a Dante Thornton quote that says Tennessee's offense was, quote, mostly every team's main talking point was asking with the offense that we run here at Tennessee if I'm able to run these pro-style routes. I had to be very intentional. Playing 2 seasons here at Tennessee, we don't have the same wide route tree that most pro-style offenses have. Now, with Hendon Hooker getting cut, guys, we do have to ask the question now. Is the issue of Tennessee and how their offense is run truly hurting players in the NFL? And will that hurt them in recruiting? I'm going to say this, and this is going to be a rough point, and it's going to be Bank on It. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, Life Made Better. Tennessee is going to draw some red flags from offensive skill players on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal this upcoming cycle. And there are a few reasons that's going to happen. One is something we're going to talk about in a little while. The Nico Iamaleava narrative from the Iamaleava camp. If Iamaleava has any sort of success at UCLA, then his narrative is going to get a lot more friendly coverage from people in the national media, which his narrative, they changed it multiple times. But one of the narratives was Iamaleava was looking for a school that would teach him how to run the pro style offense, where he could learn pro concepts to prepare him for the NFL. On top of that, there's Hendon Hooker getting cut. More importantly, and this is a big deal now, Joe Milton as the backup for the Cowboys is, guys, I'm just going to tell you this. Joe Milton might get a start here or there this year. And it's not going to be pretty. Not because Joe Milton developed in Josh Heupel's offense. No, because Joe Milton's not a good quarterback. He's not an NFL quarterback. Okay, I'm just going to say that straight up. He's not an NFL quarterback, and it's not going to work. And because of that, it's going to be a red flag for skill players picking Tennessee. Now, let me be very clear. I don't think that it's a big deal long term. I am a firm believer that if you develop right, that if you're a good player, you can develop. It shouldn't be that hard to adjust to a system. First of all, Hendon Hooker, Tennessee's not the only system he played in. He played at Virginia Tech for 4 years. So I don't think it matters anyway. However, I do think it will have an effect on the minds of recruits with narratives that are going to come out this year. That is Bank on It. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, Life Made Better.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Now, I want to address a few things about this because I think this storyline is overrated. We're not so sure. One, I agree with, there was a commenter who actually brought up a good point, which is that Hendon Hooker had, Sam Schrock says Hendon Hooker had 3 years to adjust. I agree. Hendon Hooker had 3 years to adjust to this system. And also Kyle Allen was named the backup. If my memory serves correctly, Kyle Allen was that backup quarterback at Texas A&M and then played at Houston under Major Applewhite. So he played under Kevin Sumlin and Major Applewhite. Neither of those guys ran pro-style offenses. Tom Herman, excuse me. Yeah, he played under Tom Herman Played under Tom Herman in 2016. And then he played under Major Applewhite in 2017. None of these guys ran pro-style offenses. So I don't think that's a big deal either. Hooker, I think the issue is he was 25 when he was drafted. He was coming off a torn ACL in college. And now the Athletic reports, the offense set his development back. I think the problem specifically with Hendon Hooker was the combination of the three made him a player that just wasn't going to fit with this offense. And Kyle Allen also just balled out in the preseason. Sometimes other quarterbacks are better. Kyle Allen's going to ball out in the preseason. Look, Hendon Hooker, I think is going to have a chance. And Dan Campbell said something very revealing where he said, quote, "Look, we're talking about Hooker right now. How much development do you believe there still is? Sometimes does the player need a change of scenery? What about your own depth in other areas? I mentioned the other day relative to that. All right, maybe there is room to grow. Is that worth it for the depth we need at O-line, D-line, receiver, and DB? And so all of those things are things you have to weigh." Again, he just said maybe Hendon Hooker needs to change the scenery, and maybe that's possible too. Okay, there's a lot of reasons Hendon Hooker could have been released, and it wouldn't be just about him learning a new system. A lot of teams might line up to sign Hendon Hooker, by the way. All right, a lot of teams might line up to sign Hendon Hooker. Let's not forget, he was in the same draft as Will Levis. And it ain't like Will Levis, who didn't play in Josh Heupel's offense, was somehow better in the NFL. He was horrendous. So I think Hooker was, I think more importantly, I think Hooker just may not have been good enough for the NFL, guys, but he is good enough to be a backup quarterback somewhere. I think he'll still get signed somewhere, but I don't think this is about Josh Heupel's offense. I don't think it's about Josh Heupel's offense. I think that's a big overreaction. At the same time, though, I do think this is a big deal. We have to point this out. Josh Heupel's offense will generate red flags because of the narrative surrounding Hooker, the narrative when people see that Joe Milton can't play in the NFL because he's going to get a chance and he's going to look awful, and the narrative surrounding Nico Iamaleava and what he said and why he went to UCLA. Nico Iamaleava is good this year. That's going to raise some red flags on the recruiting trail. It shouldn't, because I'm going to tell you guys this. It's being brought up in the message boards. And Josh Carter's right. Hooker wasn't going to sniff an NFL roster at Virginia Tech. He was only drafted because of Tennessee's offense. That's it. That's the point I want to make. We're overrating the offense and what development you have in the offense in terms of how you can prepare for the NFL. If you're good, you're good. Sometimes the quarterbacks just weren't good enough. This is one of the narratives people used to say about Steve Spurrier in the 90s. Oh, his fun and gun offense doesn't get quarterbacks ready for the NFL. No, Danny Warfield just wasn't good enough to play for the NFL, and neither was Shane Matthews, okay? Those guys just weren't good enough to play in the NFL, and neither was Doug Johnson. The point was Spurrier didn't go for great quarterbacks because he didn't need to waste his recruiting on that, because he knew he had a system where he could just have the quarterback throw it up and the receivers would beat guys deep every time. I don't think it had anything to do with his system not developing quarterbacks for the NFL. That's just silly. Okay, the same is true when, Tom Osborne never developed quarterbacks for the NFL. None of those quarterbacks that he signed could play in the NFL anyway as quarterbacks. Tommy Frazier could never have played in the NFL as a quarterback. So I think it's just silly to bring that up. I think more importantly is Josh Heupel's system helps you get recognized. It will raise red flags, but if you're good, you're good. And the NFL will figure this out. So I'm of the big time mindset, by the way, that you're going to be fine if you can play. All right. And I don't think it's a big deal that Heupel's offense is not preparing you for the NFL. A lot of times it is just on the quarterback. And people are bringing this up, and it's a great point. Hendon Hooker wouldn't have even been drafted had he not gone to Tennessee. So maybe that was the real Hendon Hooker. And I'm saying this with a ton of respect for Hendon Hooker. I love him. The player he is, what he did for Tennessee, he deserves all the respect in the world. But another point, Josh Dobbs didn't necessarily run a pro style at Tennessee. Now, Mike DeBoer had pro concepts, to be fair, but Josh Dobbs hung around in the NFL for a long time. So I genuinely find Hendon Hooker and the narrative that it's about Josh Heupel's offense to be silly, but I do think it's actually going to hurt Tennessee when it comes to targeting talent this upcoming year, and that's one of the big problems. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville, Champions of Good and Orange, htKnoxville.com, htKnoxville.com. It is time for This Day in Tennessee Football History. And guys, finally, we are bringing you an actual game to remember, because Tennessee opens this season at a neutral site. On this day, in 1990, 35 years ago, Tennessee opened the season against fifth-ranked Colorado at Anaheim Stadium in Anaheim, California, in what is known as the Pigskin Classic. And Tennessee tied fifth-ranked Colorado, the eventual national champions, 31-31. They had a chance to set up for a game-winning field goal at the very end, but Chuck Webb kept running as time ran out when he should have gone out of bounds. But still, Tennessee tied Colorado. That set the tone for that year as they would go 9-2-2 and win the SEC championship. This day in Tennessee sports history, brought to you by Joe Neuber Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Neuber Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNeuberCollision.com. JoeNeuberCollision.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
All right, when we come back, guys, first hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. Remember, we are brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle Banks & Jones? Led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. When we come back, we're going to talk about Nico Iamaleava because Joel Klatt is accusing Tennessee of manipulating the narrative. What the H? Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln, Knoxville.
Hello, ma'am. Here to look at that plumbing problem? Oh boy. Yep. You're gonna need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP. You are not gonna believe this. You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. It is time to discuss Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt alleges the host of Fox Sports national college football analyst Joel Klatt, is accusing Tennessee of, quote, pulling a fast one on everyone this offseason. Klatt said Monday on the Joel Klatt Show that he thinks Tennessee got away with controlling the narrative during Nico Iamaleava's controversial departure from the program in April. Of course, as we all remember how Iamaleava left Tennessee, there was the Thursday before the spring game, Pete Nakos came out with a report that Iamaleava was negotiating and wanting up to $4 million in NIL money when he was only making $2.7 million. Iamaleava's father comes out and denies the report and refers to Pete Nakos as B-word Nakos. Friday, Nico Iamaleava is not at practice. Saturday, Nico Iamaleava transfers. The narrative gets out that Nico Iamaleava was and his family were trying to strong arm for more money. Josh Heupel said no, he bailed. Klatt came out and said that Tennessee controlled the narrative. Here's what he said about Tennessee's offense. And actually it plays with what we just talked about on the last segment. Quote, here's why I would defend Nico a little bit, is because he never really got a chance to tell his side of the story. Tennessee ran out basically a propaganda effort and got to tell the story without Nico being involved at all. It was not all about money. It really wasn't. If it was, he wouldn't have gone to UCLA, which is the telltale sign. He wanted the offense to grow with him. And let me tell you why. The offense that Josh Heupel runs is almost like a glorified high school offense. It's the old Art Briles offense that they ran at Baylor. And the reason that it doesn't develop a quarterback is because everything is a half field read. So it's the wide receiver choice routes on one side of the field, which is why none of those Baylor quarterbacks made it in the NFL. Nico understood that, and he knew that. And so they wanted the offense to expand, to grow and develop. And when it didn't do that through spring football, that's when he was like, I don't know if this is the right place for me, or the family started to think this is not the right place for him. He never got to tell the story because Tennessee immediately ran out there and made it a money issue and tried to take the virtuous route and say, oh, woe is us. Look at what our quarterback is doing, holding us hostage, which in the very same breath or in the next sentence, Tennessee was turning around and contacting guys that were at other schools trying to get them to transfer to Tennessee, a clear tampering violation. So Tennessee got away with all of this from a narrative standpoint, which is unfair to Nico Iamaleava. And I hope he succeeds, and we'll see. That is What the H, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. We will play a clip from them in a second to give you more information on Rick Terry Jewelry. But here's why this is What the H. Tennessee didn't start the narrative that Nico Iamaleava was asking for more money. Pete Nakos reported that on Thursday. Nico transferred on Friday. We had our very own Will West on the show that week and the week after who said, look, if that report's not out, there's a chance he stays. Then we had ESPN reporting that Nico Iamaleava was telling players Wednesday he was going to leave. Okay? This isn't Tennessee trying to control a narrative. Were they smart in how they got out there and did it? Yes. But there's a few things Joel Klatt misses. First of all, I want to go back to this offense thing for a minute because this is bothering me a lot. Joel Klatt made his own case against himself. Because he said, which is why you see none of those quarterbacks made it in the NFL. Well, in case Joel Klatt forgot, RG3, Robert Griffin III, played in Art Briles' system and was Rookie of the Year in 2012 and was looking really good until he shattered his leg and then became a diva and had head case issues. But everybody who saw RG3 as a rookie, I didn't believe in him long-term, but it was because he was going to Washington. I knew everything Washington had given up for him. And I knew he could not be this dual threat quarterback given how small he was. However, had RG3 had his head on right, had he and Mike Shanahan played for a different franchise that wasn't run by the biggest moron in the history of sports and Dan Snyder that could have drafted some help around him, then actually he could have been a successful quarterback. His failures in the NFL had nothing to do with Art Briles and Art Briles' coaching whatsoever. So that was dumb on its own for Joel Klatt to say, to bring in the Art Briles offense. I didn't even bring it in on the last segment. I did it because Josh Heupel's offense is actually different from the Briles offense. The only thing that's similar is he's right. In both cases, they're taught to read one side of the field. So what? He just made his case against himself because Mike Shanahan was able to develop an offense for RG3 and make him Rookie of the Year. More importantly, though, and this is a big one, the Iamaleava camp, we're forgetting that they lied. They got caught lying because they said two different things. One, Iamaleava knew when he committed to Tennessee that this is what the Josh Heupel offense does. They coach you to put up video game numbers, okay? Josh Heupel had already been coaching Hendon Hooker for 2 years when Iamaleava committed to Tennessee. He had already developed a reputation at Central Florida. He had already been an offensive coordinator at Missouri. This Josh Heupel offense that was developed got famous at Missouri in 2016 and 2017, then got famous when he was head coach at UCF from 2018 to 2020, and then got famous when he was head coach at Tennessee in 2021, and I think he landed Iamaleava, to be fair, in 22 before Hendon Hooker's second year at Tennessee. But you had a body of work of 6 years to look at Heupel's offense to know this is what they do. Then Iamaleava was at Tennessee on campus. He saw the 2022 season. Then he played in the system in 2023 and 2024. Why didn't he transfer after 2023 when he was the backup in the system? See, this isn't adding up at all. But here's the other reason it's not adding up. They got caught lying. They got caught lying because Iamaleava said Iamaleava's family said after Tennessee controlled the narrative for 2 weeks, they finally came out and had their own PR team say it was about trying to learn different pro concepts. But then Iamaleava at Big Ten Media Days himself says it was so he could be close to home with family when family was all out in Knoxville. They can't even get their story straight on the lie on why they transferred. And more importantly, Joel Klatt says it wasn't about money. That's why they chose UCLA. No, Joel. They chose UCLA because they didn't have anywhere else to go, because nobody else was willing to offer them the money they thought they could negotiate for. That was that no other school was willing to offer that type of money. Timothy McGee with a super chat says, hey, can we see now our type offense is a Big 12 gimmick that doesn't teach wide receiver quarterback anything to translate to the NFL? Yes, Timothy, it doesn't. But like, again, my point on all that is who cares? Like, your job as a coach in college is not to fully develop players. David Cutcliffe did that, and he deserves a lot of credit. But in the 90s, Steve Spurrier had more success. And again, you can make it in the NFL if you're not developed in college. There's tons of coaches in the NFL that develop players and help them learn systems, okay? The offense for Tennessee is to help you put up video game numbers so you do get noticed to get drafted. Again, the big question here is, why would Iamaleava go to – Klatt's asking the wrong question. He says, why would Iamaleava go to UCLA if it was about money? Well, Joel, why would Iamaleava go to UCLA if it was about playing in the right offensive system development for the NFL when he's playing under an offensive coordinator who's never called plays before by himself, and he's playing for a head coach who looks way in over his head? That's the real question. What the H brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Or the H brought to you by RickTerryJewelry.com. Joel Klatt is, I'm just going to give my suspicions, because this used to be how people felt ESPN was because of the different contracts that were had. And I'm going to give a big suspicion here, and you guys can tell me if I'm crazy. Joel Klatt is running cover for UCLA because of Fox's deal with the Big Ten. And I'm going to put that as a poll question. Is Joel Klatt running cover for Nico Iamaleava because of Fox's Big Ten contract? Yes or no? You guys let me know on that. I think that's the big thing. Fox has a deal with the Big Ten. Look, I've told you guys this for a while. The SEC has done a stupid negotiation with ESPN, but ESPN's getting the deal of a century on that from their end, so they love the SEC. They're going to be very friendly. Fox and CBS are dependent on the Big Ten getting bigger because they invested so much money in them and overpaid, which is good negotiation by the Big Ten. Bad on Fox, CBS, and NBC's part. But because of that, they're going to overpromote everything Big Ten related. And that includes defending a player who transferred from Tennessee to the Big Ten. Again, I don't know how you can look at Nico Iamaleava and all the evidence that we saw and say that he transferred over the offensive system when he went to a school that, yes, while it does have Indiana's offensive coordinator from last year who does run more pro concepts, at the same time has a very inexperienced offensive coordinator. And if the question is, why did he choose UCLA? If you're going to answer to me, well, he chose UCLA because that was his only option, I would agree with you, Joel. But if he chose UCLA because that was his only option, then that also means that's why he chose UCLA, and it could still be about money. He just didn't have any leverage or any options to go to, so he had to settle on UCLA. I don't know how Joel Klatt can't make that connection unless, again, he is at Fox. His job is to run cover now for Big Ten programs. This is one of the problems with conferences inking deals with networks, is those conferences and the networks are going to be more friendly to the conferences of which they cover. That's always been the case. Why many people believe that there was an ESPN conspiracy against the SEC for so long. Most notably, people talk about Peyton Manning not winning the Heisman in 97. I can bring up to you the propaganda campaign to keep Auburn out of the national title in 2004. Why? The SEC had an exclusive deal with CBS, and then ESPN, the ABC as a whole, had a deal with the biggest game of every other conference. But they really wanted the SEC. Everybody resented the SEC for doing that, and that was a huge deal that there was a big ESPN propaganda campaign against the SEC because of that. During that time. Now ESPN does the opposite. What happened in 2011? ESPN ran a propaganda campaign to get Alabama into the national title game despite losing to LSU for a rematch over Oklahoma State. Why did they run that propaganda campaign? Does anybody know why? Because ESPN had $1 billion deal with the SEC at that time when Mike Slive signed a huge contract with them. When you take that into account, you can see why ESPN loved the SEC at that point. This is what I think Joel Klatt's doing. I think he's absolutely running cover for a Big Ten program. And quite honestly, his logic didn't even add up. Maybe Nico did want more pro concepts, but the way he went about this makes that make no sense. And there's no way to believe that what he did makes sense by any reasonable stretch of the imagination. Portions of the program are brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Walk in and say, hey, Mo, Off the Hook Sports sent you. When we come back, it's SEC power ranking time, baby. The season is starting. Stick with us 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume 4 dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Once again, hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. It is time for the stat of the day, and it's a good one. It's a good one. It's kind of an intriguing one, though. It doesn't necessarily reflect the best on Tennessee. Stat of the day is this. Tennessee is 9-6 all time against ACC teams on neutral fields. Seems pretty good, right? 9-6 all time against ACC teams on neutral fields. Well, yes, it does. However, there's a bit of a caveat. It's 4-0 against ACC teams during the regular season on neutral fields. 4-0. Those 4 wins include the battle at Bristol against Virginia Tech in 2016, NC State and Atlanta in 2012, Georgia Tech in Atlanta, somehow that counted as a neutral game in 2017, and NC State in Charlotte last year. So they are 4-0 against ACC schools on neutral fields. Again, for those who don't know, when they've beaten Virginia Tech and Syracuse other times, sometimes even on neutral fields, but the reason we don't bring all those up is because at the time, those 2 schools were in the Big East, not the ACC. But when they actually face ACC schools on neutral fields in the regular season, they are 4-0, having beaten NC State twice, Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech. So that's an interesting stat of the day. Stat of the day brought to you by Peak IV Hydration. Live your life to the fullest in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. It is time, and I'm putting the chat for the Peak IV Hydration in the link now. It is time for Hot or Cold, brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow more on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Facebook.com/sports treasures TN. Facebook.com/sports treasures TN. Hot or cold is this? What are my preseason SEC power rankings? Now, let me give you guys something up front. Let me just tell you this. The preseason SEC power rankings. How should they be put together? Here is how. They should not be a projection. They should be based on how you finished last season and who you have coming back this year at key positions. Period. End of story. Nothing else. They should not be based on anything else. With that said, preseason SEC power rankings should not involve what I think is going to happen. So, for instance, as I'm about to give you my preseason power rankings, Alabama, I told you guys I'm high on. I'm very high on Alabama because I believe Ty Simpson is the perfect fit for Kalen DeBoer's offense. I believe Jalen Milroe wasn't, so losing Jalen Milroe helps. However, that's all projections. That's all analysis. Power rankings should be straight up. How did Alabama finish the season, and who did they lose? Meaning they are going to be much lower in my preseason SEC power rankings than they will be in my actual projection for how they finish the season. So my hot or cold game is going to be this. Will the team that I name at where they are finish higher or lower than where I have them in my SEC power rankings at the end of the year? That's going to be hot or cold, brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Facebook.com/sports treasures TN. Facebook.com/sports treasures TN. We're going to go through all 16 teams now. Let's have a little fun. Let's get rolling. SEC power rankings to start the season. We kick things off with Mississippi State at number 16. Now, Mississippi State's 5th in the SEC in total returning starters with 245. I do believe Jeff Levy will turn things around. However, given what they did last year, going 2-10, being easily the worst team in the SEC, they start the year at number 16. However, and this is clear, I'm hot on Mississippi State being better than last in the SEC this year. I think Mississippi State will be significantly better than last in the SEC. So with that with that in mind, I'm very hot on Mississippi State not finishing worst in the SEC. They went 0-8 in conference play. Number 15, Kentucky. This is a tough one for me. This is a really tough one for me. But I'm cold on Kentucky. I think they will either finish last or next to last in the SEC this year. I think they are getting exposed more to Mark Stoops, having to play the not just with the no divisions conference schedule. I think there are many issues there, and I really do think they will get exposed. the more they end up playing. So I'm sorry, I'm cold on Kentucky. Oklahoma, number 14. I'm cold on Oklahoma. They're going to be a bottom 3 team. They're going to be really bad. They'll either be 14 or worse. I'm kind of giving away who I think the bottom teams in the SEC are going to be, and I think Oklahoma will be there. I think things are going to come apart under Brent Venables. I think Jackson Arnold's issues last year were much more about Brent Venables and Oklahoma than they were anything else, and I think things come undone again this year, so I'm cold on Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma and Kentucky are 2 of the bottom 3 teams in the SEC. Arkansas, number 13. The reason they're at number 13 is and for the record, Oklahoma finished 4th from worst in the SEC. They're 3rd from worst in this. Arkansas finished 5th from worst in the SEC. 6th from worst. I'm sorry. They finished 11th in the SEC last year. I have them down at 13th because they lost a lot of key starters, which is what moved them down to 13. I'm cold on them too because I have trouble believing that Sam Pittman can keep the luck he had last year. I just think things are going to come apart again. So I'm cold on Arkansas. Now, let's move up. Vanderbilt at number 12. Vanderbilt finished 12th in the SEC last year. They were 7-6. Now they're at number 12, staying there because they have Diego Pavia back. It's hard to see them actually being a lot better, but I'm actually hot on them finishing better than 12th. I think they'll finish possibly in the top 10. I will name some of the teams who I think will finish below them. But yeah, no, I'm actually hot on Vanderbilt. But I'm on them being better than number 12. I think Clark Lee's a very good head coach. Diego Pavia being back does matter, despite what you think about his moxie and his talking. I'm high on them. Auburn at number 11. Now, this is going to be a hot take for some of you guys because Auburn finished last year 14th out of 16 teams in the SEC, and I've got them up at number 11. Why is that? Well, Auburn is 3rd in the SEC in returning starters, 264 total starts. They're entering their 3rd year under Hugh Freeze. The returning starters give them a big boost, plus the addition of Jackson Arnold. However, on my projections, I'm cold on Auburn because I think things are coming apart under Hugh Freeze, and I don't think he cares about winning anymore. So I'm cold on Auburn. Texas A&M at number 10. Now, a lot of people have Texas A&M in the top 25, ahead of Tennessee and things like that. I understand. Texas A&M finished 8th, tied for 8th in the SEC last year. I have them down at number 10 because they, again, it's not necessarily about them. It's about the teams that were ahead of them last year. And a couple of teams that they finished ahead of, honestly, had a stronger finish to the season last year. However, with their returning starters, it was a tough call. And I will say this, I'm hot on Texas A&M being better than 10th in the SEC before the year is all said and done. We're going to see how that goes. Missouri at number 9. Missouri finished 7th in the SEC last year. You could make an argument that they should be higher than 9th because Missouri leads the SEC in returning starters. But we all know Missouri wasn't the actual 7th best team in the SEC last year. They benefit from an easy schedule, the easiest SEC draw every year. That happened last year. So Missouri is at number 9 because of that. Am I hot on Missouri finishing better than number 9? Believe it or not, no. I'm cold on them. I think they will finish below Vanderbilt in my power rankings by the end of the year. I don't know if they'll finish below them in the overall standings. Number 8, Alabama. Now, many of you may ask why Alabama is so low. Alabama last year finished, for those who don't know, 5th in the SEC. They lost the second to last week to Oklahoma, 24-3. Then they lost their bowl game to Michigan, 19-13. So they had a terrible finish to the season. They also lose their quarterback. And they actually are near the bottom in returning starters at 191. Just that alone, just basic math and basic how they finish the season is why Alabama has to be down at number 8. However, I'm very hot on them finishing way higher than number 8 when the season is all said and done, because I actually believe Ty Simpson will make them better. That's my projection, though. That can't be a power ranking. Power rankings are how you're doing at this moment. Ole Miss is number 7. Now, I get Ole Miss lost to Florida late last year, but they also beat Georgia before that, and then they beat Mississippi State and Duke to close out the year. They won 5 of their final 6 games under Lane Kiffin, and they returned, despite all the transfer portal talk, they're middle of the pack in returning starters. They are 9th in the SEC returning starters. That's what puts them ahead of Alabama, the finish of the season with an actual bowl win and more returning starters. However, I have to point this out. I am actually cold on Ole Miss finishing number 7 in the SEC, and that is because I think that Alabama will be better than them, and I think Texas A&M will be better than them too. So I'm cold on Ole Miss finishing that high. The only thing that might help them are a couple of teams ahead of them. And we're going to get to those next. Tennessee, number 6. Tennessee had a bad finish to the season, losing to Ohio State 42-17, but then again, Ohio State went and won the national title. Tennessee then lost a ton of talent, which includes Nico Iamaleava, and they are last in the SEC in returning starters this year. That's why they're down at number 6. People might ask why they're not lower. Well, number 6 is low enough for a team that was one of the top 3 teams in the SEC last year to make the college football playoff. But I'm hot on them finishing higher than 6 because I got a couple teams ahead of them that are going to be worse. LSU at number 5. LSU finished 9-4, and they won their final 3 games, and they are 4th in the league in returning starters. With that on paper, they should be much, much better this year. And actually, I'm hot on LSU being better than 5th. Everybody's going to accuse me of being the LSU fan. I get it, but I finally believe Brian Kelly's team is going to turn a corner. So LSU at number 5, I'm hot on them being better than that. Florida at number 4. Nobody had a stronger finish to the season than Florida. Florida beat LSU, then they beat Ole Miss, then they won their bowl game against Tulane and also won at Florida State to finish the year 8-5 after being down at 4-5, and Billy Napier was all but fired. And they finished 8-5. And while they are 12th in returning starters with 195, they upgraded on a lot of talent on paper on the recruiting trail, and they returned DJ Lagway, their quarterback, which gives them more of an inflated value. That's why they're up at number 4. However, I'm cold on Florida, and the biggest reason I'm cold on Florida is because, and this is a huge one, I think the way they finished last year was overrated. They beat an LSU team that had quit on the season after losing to Alabama the week before, knowing that no college football playoff was in store for them. Then they beat an Ole Miss team that had expended all its energy beating Georgia and stopped caring after that. They beat them at home. Then they beat Florida State on the road. Florida State was horrible last year and already quit on the season 2 months earlier. And then they beat a group of 5 school in their bowl game. I genuinely think Florida is massively overrated, and I am cold on them. Hot or Cold brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily update, Sports Treasures /T. And we get to our top 3 teams next.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Number 3 in my SEC power rankings, and this is going to be the hottest take I have on the day, is Texas. Now, people will say, oh, but Texas had the best record in the regular season last year in the SEC, and they're the number 1 team in the nation this year, and they ain't bigger than the coaches poll. You gotta love Texas. The SEC regular season schedule for Texas, they gave them the easiest schedule possible in the SEC last year, and the same is true this year. More importantly, Texas, what did they do against the actual quality opponents they played last year? They beat Michigan, who turned out to not be good. They beat Oklahoma, who turned out to not be good. They beat Vanderbilt. Oh my gosh, they beat Vanderbilt, and they beat Texas A&M. But they played Georgia twice. Lost both times. One time when Georgia had their backup quarterback in. They beat a Clemson team that had no business getting into the college football playoff, and they had to cheat to beat Arizona State in double overtime. So their record is massively inflated at 13-3 last year. And on top of that, they lost their quarterback. So yeah, I got them down at number 3 in the SEC, while everybody else is going to have number 1. They start the year in my SEC power rankings ranked number 3. More importantly, my projections. Okay, I'm hot on them because I still, while I don't believe in Steve Sarkisian. I believe in Arch Manning, and I think Arch Manning will develop well and be a very good quarterback. I am projecting a lot of success for Arch Manning. So I'm hot on Texas, particularly because number 2, and this is one of my other really, really hot takes. Number 2 is South Carolina. They finished last year 9-4. I get it. And yes, they did lose their bowl game to Illinois, but the way they finished the regular season so strong, beating Clemson on the road, beating Missouri, beating Texas A&M, winning at Vanderbilt and at Oklahoma, winning their final 6 games. Lenora Sellers was the best player in the SEC to finish the season. And I have to weight the fact that you're playing a bowl game at the end of the year. And with Lenora Sellers back and how strong South Carolina finished the season, yeah, no, they're number 2 in my SEC power rankings to start this year. However, I'm cold on them, guys. Come on, they're not going to finish second best team in the SEC. Not with Shane Beamer as head coach. That's not happening. And the number 1 team in my SEC power rankings to start the year, Georgia. Georgia is still the best team in the SEC as of right now. They didn't, in my opinion, they might as well have gone as far as Texas had. I know Texas went to the semifinals, whereas Georgia went to the quarterfinals of the playoffs and lost with their backup quarterback, but they beat Texas with that backup quarterback. And I think you have to have Georgia ahead of Texas right now because of that. I have Georgia as my number 1 team in my SEC power rankings. Now, to be fair, I'm cold on Georgia finishing there because I don't think they're going to win the SEC. I'll get my prediction on that later in the week, but I don't think Georgia's winning the SEC this year. So I am cold on that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones by T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com. We broadcast live every weekday, 10 a.m. Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Ring the bell. Turn on your notifications. Thank you all for tuning in today. Again, we'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. It is game week in college football, man. Let's have a lot of fun with this. You guys have a great rest of your day. I will see you guys tomorrow with Caleb Calhoun. This has been a presentation of Off the